no one wants to come to the site and have, for example, the consent banner take up half their page and it blocks the content and it doesn't make them want to engage any further. So make sure that the banner is of an appropriate size, large enough to contain all of the information and the buttons that you want users to have access to, but small enough so that users can continue reading through your site with the banner and engage with it as they choose to. And this is also important to take into account when considering how this banner displays across different devices, such as, for example, a banner might display properly on desktop, but it might take up half the screen on mobile, and that might not be a good user experience for people coming in from mobile devices. So you want to ensure that your banner is displaying properly across all devices. This could involve edits to your site code or into the CMP backend to control the size of this banner, but just ensure that the user experience is good for all different devices. Make sure to also include granular consent options that are specific but also do not overlap. Of course, there is always the paradox of choice, which is users being confronted with many options will be overwhelmed with those options, and will find it difficult to make a decision. It is important to find a good balance with consent specifically, because you want users to be able to granularly choose which cookies they want to opt into, and you want to make sure those options are specific and clear, but you also don't want to overwhelm them. So make these categories encompass a lot, such as, for example, user preferences on a site. That encompasses a lot, but users know what that is. Statistics and marketing, also pretty self-explanatory. So make sure all those options are clear. Of course, with any technical configuration, there is always the chance of falling into common errors or pitfalls in terms of compliance, and we've listed some of those here. These include, for example, failing to have a clear and accessible privacy policy. Of course, there is always the saying that people don't usually read the privacy policy, but if you think about going to a site or signing up to something or installing something, there's a bit of reassurance knowing that the privacy policy is there, knowing that the organization has thought to include all of this to be transparent with their requirements. Not having it, of course, will lose trust. It might indicate that the organization does not care enough to put that there, or doesn't care about user data privacy. So just have a privacy policy that is accessible somewhere on your sites, that your cookie banner can even link out to. Once again, it's not about necessarily users reading the privacy policy or being engaged with it. It's just knowing that it's there provides a little bit of relief for them. The next point is relying on implied consent using pre-checked boxes or failing to provide granular consent options. And the consequences of this would be that these would absolutely violate consent requirements. Pre-checked boxes are especially egregious because you are assuming that users are going to consent to everything when they might only want to consent to the necessary cookies. And having that as a default option to quote unquote trick users into giving data who might not be paying attention to what the banner is saying is definitely suspicious. And so the solution here would be to implement a robust CMP, providing explicit consent options and maintaining user consent records to ensure that this doesn't happen. Next point is failing to implement security measures on your site to protect personal data. And this is especially important once you introduce a consent banner. You want to ensure that your site is resistant against data breaches or getting hacked. The consequences of someone breaking into your system will be dire if you have a consent banner that ensures and promises that users will have a certain level of data privacy. Breaking this will lead to a massive loss of trust and damage of reputation.